Hi, Heathens. Welcome. Hello. So glad you all are here. Sorry for the difficulty of earlier. I am trying to work with so many people in so many time zones that when I read something that's not Pacific Standard Time, I'm like, nah, Eastern. Got it. Like, that's it. That's the only thing. And then I thought Andrew forgot about me, but no, he would not, because he
Never.
has 24 interviews back to back that he manages to show up for. So it's probably a me thing, if we're being honest.
It's impossible that I could forget about you. However, it's not a you thing. At my North Carolina talk, like a week ago or 2 weeks, whenever that was, what even is time right
I don't
now?
know. Yeah.
I showed up an hour early, and I did that for my Arizona talk a few months ago too.
Hey,
It's just the
you
world
know
we
what?
live in. Shit
We're all
happens.
just doing our best.
We'll just drink through it.
Okay, I don't know if y'all are drinking tonight. If you don't drink, that's fine. But I'm gonna keep it 100 with you guys. I'm going through some shit. We don't have to get into the deets, you know what I mean? But if I start crying, mind your own business, or
Or we'll go
send
through
me
it
like,
on the together.
yeah, we'll go through it on the air. We'll just work through it live and in living color. No, but this stream is for Andrew's book. Just giving y'all the heads up that if I get a little weepy, just be there for me. You guys are a great community. All right.
Also, I mean, just like disclaimer, it's not like the writing in the book that is
Sorry.
sad.
Let me say this. It has nothing to do with Andrew or his book. So let's be clear on that.
It's a scary book, and
yes.
it may leave people a little alarmed about the future of our country.
Yeah, I mean, it should.
Yeah.
I think, yes, it should leave people alarmed. I'm just putting it out there. It has nothing to do with Andrew, nothing to do with his book. Excellent writing, excellent book. I'm just having a bit of a day. So, yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And I won't hear anything else about it. Okay. And unless you want to be on the next on the list, just act right. So, okay, I am here with what was it? With a noted fake Christian.
Yep, that's me.
Noted fake Christian TikTok attorney, yeah. Andrew. Yep. The name I always mispronounce, even though I've known him for like a year at this point. Seidel.
You got it right.
Oh my God.
And I think in those 24 interviews I did yesterday, everybody got it wrong. I also just don't care at this point. I've stopped correcting people, so it's on me, really.
My name, Jessica, is spelled Jessecca. I don't correct people anymore. If you want to spell it with an I.
Oh, okay. The spelling you don't correct.
Oh no, no.
Do people say that wrong?
No. My grandmother spelled my name wrong till the day she died, and I was just like, "That's cool." Yeah, it's okay. But in any event, Andrew has written a couple of books. You may have heard of them. One was The Founding Myth, which we can discuss, but we are not here to focus on. And one is his most recently released book, American Crusade, How the Supreme Court is Weaponizing Religious Freedom. And I will say this. I did an interview with Andrew months and months and months ago before this book came out, I believe. Or, yeah, it was before it came out, because it just came out. And it was quite the interview. I think I brought up, you might know Andrew from TikTok, from his being a lawyer, being an atheist activist, or his thirst traps. It's hard to know what you might know him from. I don't know. Could be anything. But the problem with that interview was not the content. Content was great. There was a sound issue, and we could not fix it, which was sad. But the upside to that is that now we're live, so we can take your questions, and also I get to not be sad by myself. So that's awesome. Andrew, welcome. Thank you for being here. You are a gentleman and a scholar.
Oh, thank you for hosting me. I have not been called those two things in the same sentence in some time, so I accept your appellations with pride and a drink. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers. I would like you to show everyone your glass and let them know what you're drinking also, if you don't mind.
Okay. I bet people can guess, but this is my, there it goes. This is my We the People whiskey glass. I got a set of these. There's a Declaration of Independence in there. There's a battle map of Concord, and I can't remember what the fourth one is. Anyway, very cool glasses. Love them. I'm a big history nerd. I got a history nerd shirt when I purchased those glasses also. And I'm drinking Irish whiskey, Green Spot whiskey, which is my sort of staple go-to beverage because it's already been a week for me, and it's only it Wednesday?
Who knows?
Yeah,
I think it's Wednesday. That's what I've heard. I have no idea anymore. I myself am Irish, so I support this.
Yeah.
Now, for those poor souls that might not know who you are, can you tell people a little bit about your background? Who are you? Who is the man, the myth, the legend, Andrew Seidel? Seidel. I can't get it right. I give up.
You got it right. Yes. Here's for people who are wondering how you say my name. You sidle up to the bar for a drink.
Thank you.
S-I-D-L-E. And
girl will remember that.
That's how you say my last name. So yeah, I'm a constitutional attorney. I've been in the trenches fighting to keep state and church separate for more than a decade now, fighting for the true understanding of religious liberty, religious freedom, not the weaponized religious privilege version that is being thrust upon the country by the Supreme Court at this moment. I like to write. I like to talk. So I've written a couple books. I've written a bunch of op-eds. You already mentioned that this guy's the new book back on the shelf back there are other books.
This is a galley copy, plebes.
Yeah, that's the collector's edition one day. I've written a textbook for law students on religion and the law, or co-edited, I should say, not written, with Professor Leslie Griffin at UNLV. I like really diving into like the nerdy history and the nerdy law. Like I've written articles on like how Year of Our Lord, that tiny little phrase and the date at the end of the Constitution was written on the paper, even though it's not part of the original Constitution. I ran down that history and when was the first time a president added "So help me God" to the presidential oath, which is written down in Article 2 and doesn't include that. That's the kind of shit that I love to dive into and get real nerdy and dirty about.
Relatable.
So yeah,
at least that is useful. Things that I get real nerdy about, it's like no one cares about that, Jessica. It's fine. I do, and I'm going to do it anyway. But that's fine. I'm glad that your nerdy interests are saving the world, or hopefully at least democracy in some way.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, yeah.
Fingers crossed. I don't know. I had something to say and I've lost it, which I feel like is probably going to happen a lot tonight. I had really high hopes for like this interview. I was like, I'm going to knock it out of the park. And instead I'm just sitting here like, how do you say your last name?
I'll do a few other, let me do a few other things. Cause like, that's the Andrew that everybody knows in the movement. Kind of. But like,
what do you do when you're not doing that?
Well,
I did see a picture of you being a Grand Canyon guide.
I was a Grand Canyon tour guide for a while, which was the coolest job ever. And I often think like when I retire / fully embrace my misanthropy and have to leave society, I'm just going to go there and do that. Except I don't know how you do tours if you don't hang out with people, but I don't know. I mean,
at least I'll know where to go because like I've fully already embraced my misanthropy. I'm ready. So if someone can find me a spot, just like,
it's a good spot for it. It's phenomenal. There's just no place like it. And I would love to travel. I've been all over the world. I was fortunate enough to be able to do semester at sea for my abroad when I was in undergrad, and that kind of sparked.
Was it with the Church of Scientology? No, I'm just
kidding. It was not. It was a cool ship like that, but without all the cultishness going on.
Boo, bummer.
Yeah, it was good. It was fun. So I mean, that's a little about me.
So when you say you're coaching soccer, is that like, this is just me being curious. It's like adult soccer or like for your kids, is it like
children, kids who have no idea what they're doing.
That's the best. And they're just like running into each other and like, oh my God, amazing.
Super fun. And it's all about like teaching, like good attitudes and how to be a good sport. And...
I could learn that probably. My attitude, a good sport. Oof, not me. Okay, so I think I remember what I was going to say. So sorry, let me say this. If you have a question, and you are in the audience, we will always prioritize super chats. If it's not a super chat, tag me or tag Correa because that way we'll see it a little bit better and we'll star it. And then I will either take questions at the end, or if they seem to fit in with what we're talking about, I'll sort of take them in that section. But just, hello, I live in California, it was an earthquake. Just so you know, thanks for coming to my Theodore chat. Last time we talked, it was before Roe v. Wade was overturned. And sweet summer children we were. Not really, but there was a lot of talk about what might happen if Roe was overturned. And I don't know if you guys remember that. It feels like it's been 1,000 years. It feels like it's been 84 years.
That's not even been 6 months.
Yeah, I don't know if y'all caught that Titanic reference, but that's what I feel like. I feel like we went from before Roe to after Roe, and I'm in a nursing home now. This is a ruse back here. So what have you seen post-Roe? I want to say that's alarming, but like all of it's alarming. I want to ask, like, sort of, what do you see happening? And I don't even know.
It's a no, like listen, Jessica, I mean, it's a hard question to ask because we're in uncharted territory. It's like, you're like looking at a blank map and being like, well, where do we go? And it's like, well, it's a blank map. Like, I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So it's a hard question to even formulate because what the fuck is
that's
really,
my question.
Really the question. Yes. And like, it's a legitimate question. And I mean, for me, it's weird. It's weird because for me, like, I said goodbye to Roe like years ago. Like, I knew it was coming. And that being said, though, like, even when it happened, first of all, I was blown away that so many people were shocked that it happened. And then I also felt that too. Like, seeing it and reading it in print and having it official is different.
It's different.
And like having the leaked opinion and knowing how bad it was and how just brazen and bitter and ridiculous a legal opinion. It was a farce and knowing that they
Roberts, Alito, I'm looking at your bitch asses, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, Alito in particular, and it didn't.
Such a hack.
Nothing changed. I mean, virtually nothing changed, right? I mean, it was basically the same thing, despite like all of the very clear and legitimate criticism it received when it was leaked. And like, even if the outcome didn't change, they didn't change anything. All of that. Yeah, I mean, and that was very striking. I mean,
because they know they don't have to, right? I think that's what stuck out to me. Is like, yeah, we're going to do this. We don't actually care if you like it. That's not what we're here for. We're an activist court, and we're going to do it anyway. So tough.
We've got our whiskey
when I'm trying to eat dinner.
They've got their power, and they are drunk on power right now. Yeah. Like they truly are. I mean, especially the 5 like conservatives. I lump Roberts in there, and Roberts is not at all safe. And I'd be happy if people want to ask questions to explain that. But so I mean, but back to the what the fuck question.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Raging.
Two really big things stand out for me in this whole push. First is that finally people are talking about abortion bans in religious terms, which the people proposing abortion bans have been doing for a long time. They've not been hiding that ball. If you listen to what legislators say when they pass these kind of abortion bans, they talk about, my Bible says life begins at conception. Psalms 119 says this passage says this. The Catholic Church tells me that they're not hiding the fact that they are motivated by imposing their narrow religious doctrine on everybody. That's what they're trying to do. But once these cases get into courts, there's like all these euphemisms that get employed, and it gets cloaked in this ridiculous language. And you can actually see this in Alito's opinion. If people go back and read the first paragraph of his opinion and the last paragraph.
I hate myself a lot, but I don't know if I hate myself enough to do that. But
so he's talking about religion, but he cloaks it in the language. He camouflages it as morality. But really he's saying life begins at conception because the Bible tells me so, and that is the only moral view to have. And I mean, we're finally seeing, I think, our side kind of wake up and start talking about this as a violation of the separation of church and state, talking about abortion bans as a violation of the separation of church and state, which is great, and something that, like, I feel like, you know, we've been saying for years. The other thing, the scarier thing, is what people realized when they got to Thomas's concurrence, which is that the end of Roe is just the beginning.
Yep.
And this court is going to come for marriage equality. This court is going to come for contraception. This court is going to come for all of the rights that we hold most dear. And the thing that, if you only take away one thing from this interview, it's that there is no amount of power or privilege that is going to satisfy these crusaders. Yeah. They will not stop unless we stop them.
Yeah. And I think, so Andrew is obviously speaking from a very experienced, like, in the trenches viewpoint. And I am grateful for your voice for a lot of reasons, but not the least of which is that, having grown up in the evangelical church, that was very much, this was their goal. Mm-hmm. And having been screaming it forever, and having people tell me, like, you're just alarmist, that's never going to happen, that's settled law, like, that's not what they want. And I'm like, no, like, that is what they want. Like, they haven't even made any qualms about it. Like, you go to church for a while, they'll tell you that's what they want, right? They have this idea, this, like, post-millennialist idea that they need to impose, God's will, or whatever, his kingdom, his law, on the country. I was speaking to Julie Ingersoll the other day, and she's awesome. She's amazing. Yeah, she wrote a book on the Christian Reconstructionist movement, which I think part of this sort of series of interviews that I'm doing right now, this one with Andrew, but also I have Jamar Tisby tomorrow, and I have Julie Ingersoll the other day. I know, thanks. I got that interview because of Andrew, so shout out. And I did an interview with Pastor Trey Ferguson and Bradley Onishi. So all of these people sort of talking about Christian nationalism and racism and this Christian Reconstruction movement, because all of these things are totally interwoven. And I'm trying to show sort of a clear line through it as best I can, because I think when I saw that, a lot of things became very clear to me. But this is not a new, I'm probably rambling at this point, sorry. No. This is not a new thing, right? Like, this isn't like Christians just woke up the other day and were like, hey, you know what? Like, yeah, I don't know, I don't really like this. Like, this has been building and building and building and building for the better part of a couple hundred years. Not like I mean, if you look at the Christian Reconstruction movement and you look at where its roots are, it's in, like, pre-Civil War Southern Presbyterianism, and those roots are very much there is a hierarchy of races, there is a hierarchy for gender, and it's very much this sort of dominion theology of, like, we need to sort of control all of this and make this.
I don't know if I'm frozen or you're frozen. Correa, you can tell me in the chat.
Yeah, it's not you, it's her. She's frozen.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna share a quote while we're waiting for the Queen to unfreeze.
Please do. Hi everyone. I was not supposed to be on screen, but here I am. Andrew, please read a lovely quote.
Jessica reminded me of one of the quotes that I included at the end of American Crusade. I call this a crusade because, the first real crusade that Pope Urban II was launched to cheers of Deus Vult, God wills it, God wills it. And he gave this sermon where he talks about the Turks that had attacked the Christian and, quote, devastated the kingdom of God. And it's obviously a translation. It's very much this us versus them. And you have these crusaders who are, dropping their plowshares and strapping on their swords and marching to the Holy Land to retake and rebuild the kingdom of God, right? It's conquest. And that was the message that Amy Coney Barrett, who is now a justice on the U.S. Supreme Court, had for the new lawyers when she roused them at the Notre Dame Law School graduation in 2006. I mean, she said that being a lawyer, quote, is but a means to an end. And that end is building the kingdom of God, right? And like I mean, these are the kind of people now that are on our Supreme Court. I mean, it's truly alarming.
It is.
Jessica.
Am I going to cry? Maybe.
I mean, it's terrifying, Jessica. Yes, like
yes, exactly.
That's yeah.
I haven't had these problems. It just dropped me off of everything. My AirPods won't connect. I'm just having a great time. It's great. Okay. I'm great. Everything is great. Just insert flames behind me. So sorry. Yes, please.
It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor for the country.
Really
but is. You're like, so here's what I want to say about your larger point, I think, Jessica. Like, there have been various waves of Christian nationalism like throughout American history, and we pushed them back. We've shoved them back to the fringe whence they came.
Yes.
Luckily, thankfully. And this one that we are facing right now is, in my opinion, the strongest for a couple of reasons. One, because it's able to capitalize on the artifacts of the previous waves and point to them and say, look, see, we are legitimate. We truly are a Christian nation. Things like one nation under God, in God we trust, right. All that nonsense bullshit. But also, I mean, what you are identifying is it's something I do get into in American Crusade. Like, I think this modern wave has its roots in Brown versus Board of Education and in the attempt to desegregate our public schools and to end Jim Crow, really. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
it goes so back because, like, so Andrew, I don't think you follow I Blame Bill, but I love her content, and she talks about growing up in, private Christian school, which is very similar to the kind of school that Jess went to, in the fact that none of the teachers were certified. This was just like a bunch of kids where
there's not enough alcohol on this planet for me to like feel good about that. Education.
Like, he was literally taught that slavery in the U.S. was ultimately okay because the souls of the slaves were saved.
No, I'm sorry. So I'm interrupting you. I'm sorry. This is something I've been talking about with a couple of people. I'm sorry. This is like, I know this is not the law anymore, but I just feel like I have to repeat it as many times as possible.
Yeah.
So the belief, before the Great Awakening, enslaved people really weren't Christian or Christianized. And when the Great Awakening happened and we start to see this sort of conversion of enslaved people to Christianity for any sort of number of reasons, we also see that the sort of powers that be in Christianity decided that, hey, yeah, actually, Christians aren't supposed to enslave Christians. So when these enslaved folks get baptized, they're going to become Christians, and the way our economy is set up, that's not really going to work. And so then they decided, like, hey, we're going to make a little change, like a little casual change to our theology. And effectively, you're going to be liberated spiritually, but not physically. Your body will remain bound. You're going to remain enslaved, but like, don't worry, you're spiritually free. And like something... I talk about this man so much, like, such a piece of shit. You can read this monograph by a certain Douglas Wilson, may he never ever know peace, called Southern Slavery as It Was. And he tries to say that, like, yes, slavery, antebellum slavery was bad, but it was bad because it wasn't biblical. However, like, slavery was like this symbiotic system because,
the same old bullshit that
they gave them healthcare and food, and they wouldn't have had it without that. And I'm like, they chopped off their hands as punishment. So, like, miss me, Doug. Anyway, that has nothing to do with the law. I just like to bring it up as often as possible because that.
Look, I think it does. I mean, like, so much of what we are struggling with and dealing with traces back to that. I mean, it's amazing how much it does. I think the most haunting, I guess maybe haunting is the wrong word.
Yes.
The phrase in all of American literature that sticks with me, that I constantly come back to, that I think of more than any other, and I was rereading W.E.B. Du Bois, The Souls of Black Folk, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And I don't even remember the full phrase, but he says, I think it's the Black church predates the Black home, is what he says. And he's talking about, like, obviously the United States, and he's talking about the legacy of slavery. And that's just like, it's something that I constantly think about and constantly come back to. And I mean, you see echoes of that throughout our law, our history, everything that we're dealing with. And I mean, one of the things that I've been also coming back to a lot lately is what do we do moving forward? And especially, given that our system is rigged toward minority rule, largely as a legacy of racism and slavery, right. How do we fix that?
I have a question that I think that I mostly know the answer to, but I think is useful for someone that's an expert to sort of answer. Mm-hmm. I don't think this is in American Crusade, or I'm just forgetting, which is possible because I forget everything.
We also had a galley copy, so you had like the advanced copy, so there was like stuff added to it.
Yeah, you don't have the like pretty copy,
but I do have it signed.
Mine is signed, ma'am.
Signed. Sorry. I'm gonna say this. My favorite. People have asked me like a bunch of things, like, what do you really like about having a platform? And I don't think they're ready for my answer, which is this: advanced copies of books. Like, that's my favorite thing. That's it. That's all. I mean,
it is one of the best perks.
It is. Yes. Like, there are many things that I like about this community and having a platform, and there's lots of things that I love. But if I'm being honest, it's the advanced copies of books. That all being said, something that comes up every election cycle is the undue disproportionate power that the Electoral College has. And I think that I have an understanding of how it was formed, why it was formed, and why that's so problematic. But I would love if someone with the legal background could just sort of speak to that for people that might not have a very like concrete understanding.
Yeah, it's a garbage institution that we should do away with.
It is, yes.
It was in my like burn it all down list. It was the first thing that I entered on that list, and I entered it some time ago. The Senate is also on that list for people following along at home. Garbage institution. We should get rid of it.
Most of American institutions at this point. The Fed.
Well, I mean, like you say that as a joke, but this is like where my head has been going lately, because and
it's like
Elie
it's a jokey joke, but like not really.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have to credit Elie Mystal for this because he's the one who like kind of pushed me.
I love
the
him.
edge.
Hi, Elie. I love
so in his new book, he talks about how he talks about the South African Constitution and how it went from apartheid to like a humane, one of the better actually constitutions.
We still hate Elon Musk, but yes, continue.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Ellie's point is you can't. They didn't just say, okay, we're going to tack 3 sentences onto our apartheid constitution, and that'll fix the whole thing. Right. Because you can't fix a document that is that tainted by just adding 3 sentences.
It is inherently racist, yes.
Yeah, and that is what the United States of America did in the wake of the Civil War. Right.
JK, 1/4 add. Like,
yeah. So you add the 13th, you had the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, and like it's good. And then by the way, the Supreme Court comes by, and by the way, like guts the 14th Amendment like just a few years later, making it pretty much worthless and almost pointless that was even passed, in an effort to re-entrench racism in the South. So anyway, yeah, I am increasingly, as a constitutional attorney, been in the trenches doing this, coming around to the idea that our institutions are at their core broken, tainted, and rotten to the point where like is metaphorically burn it all down and start over. The problem that I come to every time I think of that is like, we're so divided as a country, which is true, but the other side from where we sit are just in their bubble of alternative facts and alternative reality. And I do not know how you could put together a constitutional convention today that would get us to a governing document that everyone would agree on. Yeah. I don't know how you would do that.
Yeah. Okay. Has Andrew ever had to place Cillian Murphy's double? I don't know. What I do know some other things though, but I'm going to save that for the end.
It's like Crispin Glover. I've never seen.
I do know a few other fun facts because Andrew's a good friend. And so before the show, he's like, "You need some questions to lighten the mood. Here you go." And I was like, "Ooh, I'm filing those away in case I start to cry." No, no, I'm good. Okay. Sorry to go back to this. So sorry, Korea. Can you tell folks?
This is your show.
I know, but I hate interrupting. I mean, I interrupt regularly, but it's a bad habit. Shout out to my ADHD and possible autism. If you can say Cillian correctly, you must be Irish. I am. Why was the Electoral College established in like simple terms? Explain to me like I'm 5 and a half.
I mean, I guess there's two simplest answers. There is a direct line you can draw to slavery and to the power of slaveholders and the slave states. There's also a direct line you can draw to the desire not to let the people have a full say. Like, I mean, there were a lot of things that were built into our Constitution that were meant to prevent the democratic mob. You know, our founders didn't have like the greatest view of people. Like everyday people that were not like of their class.
White men.
Even like ones that were against like weren't religious themselves thought that religion was a tool to teach people morality for people who weren't smart enough to learn it for themselves. Like
but what they're doing here is they're really trying to prevent the people broadly, the people outside their class, from having a straight popular vote is essentially what it is. And Craig, I mean, what you're saying is like
earlier, but like if you just look at Bacon's Rebellion, right? Like I point people to this all the time as like Bacon's Rebellion is this rebellion that occurs when people that are economically sort of equal or like have the same economic struggles band together to fight against this planter class, the elite, the whatever. And it had nothing to do with what color their skin was, right? It had everything to do with like what sort of their economic status was. And then you see the planter class respond in a way that's like, all right, well, we need to figure out a way to divide them. So let's give like a little bit more power, like nominally more power to the whites.
I mean, there's such brilliant history and writing being done on that by folks like Carrie Lee Merritt. I mean, there's so many awesome historians and scholars out there who are looking at that and educating about that.
Not you, Andrew. I mean, you have, but everybody else, go read Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow.
Yeah, it's amazing, absolutely amazing. I actually have a list on bookshop.org of like 10 books that'll change the way you think, and that
he does. They're all good.
As is Ellie Mistal's book. I mean, so
as if he needs my like check of approval.
But, so you have the desire of the upper crust, you know, the founders, the educated elite, the crusties. I like that. To prevent the unwashed masses from getting a straight popular vote, and so they come up with this compromise of the Electoral College and the closed doors behind the Constitutional Convention, and it's directly from that where they're like, okay, well, how are we going to decide, you know, electors? It's based on population, and the slave owners are like, well, we have people who are property, so, and then you get this awful 3/5 compromise that is, you know, like a complete and utter stain on our Constitution that cannot be undone. So I mean, there's serious problems that stem from and tie directly to the Electoral College.
I think one of the things I was wanting to bring up is that you talk about how, Roberts, because like Roberts seems to get set apart in the fact that he's the only one on this, that's not it, but he has had this goal all along. He's been a crusader. He's just wanted to be a gradual change so that people kind of didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, it's the frog in the boiling water
over people's eyes. And I'm wanting to bring up this here where they were saying that
I hate
Brooklyn
to say
Lou.
this, but it's won. It won a long time ago.
No,
that's the dilemma.
No, but they haven't, like, what we're talking about is like, they went from, it's states' rights, so we're going to overturn Roe and give it back to the states. And literally like 8 weeks later, Lindsey Graham is saying that he wants to go for a nationwide ban. Like, like we figured like that was going to be a little bit. No, they're going straight for it. They're already, like Thomas in his dissent or in his opinion literally said like, we're going to go for marriage equality. We're going to go for contraception.
You are black.
But
sorry, also, like, I don't know. I feel like I don't need to point that out. Like, I feel like that's clear. Your wife is white. Like, you could just get a divorce. Like, you don't have to do this to all of us.
He didn't say loving versus Virginia, but other people are. Leaders in the movement are now.
That's what's coming. Like, there's no like.
But people in the movement are literally calling for the 19th Amendment to be overturned. Like, and I'm not talking about like random trolls. I'm talking about
for those of you listening at home, the 19th Amendment is what extended the franchise to half the population.
Hi.
Yes, include 2/3 of the people on screen.
Yes. I have nothing to lose as a reminder. So if y'all come for that, you've seen me on Twitter. Anyway. Okay, so we sort of discussed the Electoral College. It's a nightmare. What else is new? Something that I discussed the other day with Julie Ingersoll was this attack on public education. So there's a couple of things that I want to discuss there, and I want to say I have not forgotten about the super chats. If you want to ask questions, please super chat and we will get to them for sure. One of the things that we talked about before in the before times was the case that I cannot remember the name of, but it was about the football coach praying on the field and how
Kennedy versus Bremerton.
Yes, thank you, Kennedy versus Bremerton. And now he's like, I just want to like be a football coach, and now he's like parading around on the right wing circuit.
He was during this case too. Yeah, I mean, like this is like he was in the Oval Office with Donald Trump signing.
He sincerely just never made varsity. Like, that's the problem here. He never made varsity, and he wants it to be all of our problem. In any event, I digress. In the before times, yeah, he got hazed, but he never made the team, and now he's bitter.
I might explain it.
I mean, I'm just saying. So in a land
not only that, but basically they were like, hey, do you want to make some money? And he was like, yeah, I'm an easy mark. I will totally take your money.
But now we're seeing things like in Florida. Also, fuck you, Ron DeSantis. I sincerely don't care if this gets demonetized. Like, eat my ass. Sorry, I hate that man. You're seeing this push to get rid of public schooling, and something, and I know I'm pushing this interview really hard. It's not up yet. It's just something that I hadn't quite pieced together yet. So I think it's really interesting where like there was this huge Christian homeschool movement for many decades leading up to the pandemic. And the pandemic was sort of like a happy accident for these people where a bunch of people had to do school from home. And so they send out all of these emails saying like, hey, Like, if you need support, like whatever, if you're homeschooling and you feel alone, like come here and we'll help you. But the support they're getting is like this very, very, very Christian whatever. I'm wondering, and again, please speak to it more broadly. These are just the points that I sort of thought of. If you would speak to this, well, sort of, if you could start with Brown versus the Board of Education.
Yeah.
And then
I mean, that's where it begins.
Run through a little bit.
I mean, yeah, that Brown is where I think you have to start, where it begins. Because you have segregated public schools segregated by race up until then. And the black schools, I mean, there's no money put into those. There's no the whole fiction of segregation that the Supreme Court handed down in Plessy versus Ferguson was that separate is equal, and it never was. I mean, first of all, separate is inherently unequal, but also they never ever came close to providing equal facilities.
Right, and now we're debating affirmative action. Sorry.
Yeah, continue. I mean, well, affirmative action.
So sorry. Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
So then you have challenges. I mean, you have Thurgood Marshall essentially leading the NAACP LDF, leading this brilliant legal strategy, and you have the court change. You have essentially the Warren Court, which is the court that we think of as when we think of the Supreme Court as like the institution that defended our rights and like vindicated the rights of the downtrodden and all that, like it was the Warren Court. And there was a brief era, maybe even into the Berger Court a little bit, where we saw that happen, where you get Brown versus Board of Education, you get Gideon versus Wainwright, you get these progressive decisions that uphold individual rights and recognize broader individual rights and expand liberty. And Brown versus Board of Education is kind of the first of those. There is a big caveat to Brown versus Board of Education that nobody talks about, and that's the phrase "with all deliberate speed." So if you go back and read the opinion, there's actually the Brown cases went on for a really long time, but there's a phrase in there where the court says you desegregate the public schools with all deliberate speed, and everybody's like, oh well. That gives us a little bit of wiggle room. And it's in the immediate wake of that you see the segregationists and the racists trying to scramble to figure out a way. Well, okay, what can we do to maintain the separation of the races?
Hello, Bob Jones.
and he's a big part of this. He's a big focus in American Crusade. Yeah. And
oh, sorry to interrupt you again. If y'all have not watched the Hulu documentary about Jerry Falwell, holy shit. I thought it was going to be
it's on tap for tomorrow night. I'm going
to say this. I won't give any spoilers. I thought it was going to be like a salacious sex scandal, and it was, but also it was like a historical documentary on like Christian nationalism, and I was
Yeah, Jess and Captain Dadpool and I are watching it Saturday, and I'm so excited. I'm like dying because I want to watch it right now.
Wait, I am?
No, sorry, other Jess.
I didn't know this, but hey,
Jess.
Well, so
in Andrew's Patreon.
Oh, okay.
Well, so after it happens, you have them rushing to try to figure out, okay, well, we got to get our kids.
How can we still be racist?
Yeah,
please.
And if we put our kids in private schools, that'll fix it, of course. But there's no private schools at the time because there's no push to have private education because everybody's in public schools. The public school system is great if you're white. It's terrible if you're black. And what you see happen is a lot of these churches then start to house these new private schools. And you see segregation academies pop up all over the South, and then you also see people I guess maybe are more familiar like when they desegregated like public pools. There's this kind of these famous stories that a lot of people know, like that cities would fill the pools in with dirt or concrete before they would let the races swim together. And they kind of did a lot of the same things with the public schools. They would teachers would basically rob them of all the textbooks and desks and sporting equipment and mascots and everything, and then take them to these new private schools and set up. And then you also have, because this is a racist country at the time. You have local school boards and city councils collaborating with it, right? Like, so they'll like one school board passed a law that paid all of their teachers a lump sum for the year up front for their salaries. So the teachers started at the public school, got paid their lump sum salary for the year, quit, and then went to teach at the private Christian school that was segregated for free. And you see, so they're coming up with all these creative workarounds. This is when school vouchers are born. This is the first time.
As it turns out, you could just like not be a piece of shit. Like it's way easier. It's way easier if you just aren't. I don't know.
You could do that.
Sorry.
But then you don't get to be a racist also. So
God damn.
It's a toss up. This is when you get the school choice movement grows directly out of this. And there's a brief moment where the IRS is trying to do the right thing. And the IRS is like, well, look,
just a brief moment.
They're like, if you're going to segregate, you're not going to be tax exempt because segregation is a societal ill. We're not extending a tax exemption to an institution that's degrading our society. So the IRS says basically like, if you segregate, you no longer get your tax exemption, school, right, whatever. So, and this then leads essentially to the election of Ronald Reagan. I'm obviously way oversimplifying all of this, but if you want the full story, it's in here.
You could read the book. Yeah,
you could read the book. Yeah.
Go to Amazon. I'm linking it.
And if you want to get a signed copy, like the Queen or Correa, if you go to bit.ly/ that's true. bit.l. Well, Correa, can you put it in the chat for me? bit.ly/signed AC. I paired up with a local bookstore.
So I do have it in the episode description, but
okay. Even better. No, it's in the.
Would you mind also dropping it in the chat though? Just
I can do that. Yes.
Appreciate you.
I also have this that I just want to show because it's funny. Why is it not big? Okay,
wait, I can't do that at all. Thank you. I want to say this.
Go ahead.
I think that and like sincerely believe that I can trace all of my adult ailments, ills, and problems directly to Ronald Reagan. I will die on this hill. I will die on it. No one can convince me otherwise, especially as someone that studied economics. Fuck that whole ass man. Anyway, sorry, please continue.
I mean, I don't know. His economic policies were terrible, so I don't know how you get from A to B there.
I mean,
okay, I'm with you. I mean, I don't. Well, so the end answer of your question, the very circuitous thing that I'm getting to is that it continues to expand from that original point, and you get into the homeschooling movement, and all of this is to say that from the beginning, when Brown versus Board of Education was decided, I mean, conservative white American Christianity declared war on our public schools. And I mean, that war has been going on ever since. School vouchers are 100% a part of that. They are not an attempt to save children from dying public schools. They are an attempt to kill public schools. I mean, the school choice movement was started by a guy who said, I think Jesus would tear down the public education institution, the public education temple. I mean, this is what they are trying to do. Of course, they're coming after public schools.
Yeah. I personally, sorry, I keep remembering things I want to talk about. I also am going to refill my drink soon because, as I said, it's been a day.
I can ask questions, or we could bring up.
Yes. Also, I don't. So here, sorry, this is just me being like annoying. Does Andrew want to refill his drink?
I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm okay.
Then we'll just carry on.
Go for it.
It was never about the drugs.
No. Dude, I loved that they talked about that in the boys.
Because for me, it's quite literally always about drugs. No, I'm just kidding. I would love for you to speak more on that for many reasons, largely because I spent a lot of time researching and reading sort of like drug policy in this country. Yeah, that was what I wrote my thesis on, kind of.
And incarceration of something like
Yes.
that?
So listen, I was an undergraduate. It's not that important, but it definitely sparked my interest. I wrote my thesis on the statistical correlation between early childhood education and crime and incarceration in later life. And so I just spent a lot of time reading sort of how drug policy has evolved since sort of the 50s-ish, 50s, 60s, like crime and punishment rhetoric, and how that contributed to it, and like the Iran-Contra crisis, just the whole thing, right? Like, it made me mad.
We're getting back to Reagan, I see.
Yeah, I told you, the root of all evil, Ronald Reagan. Then I found Brian Stevenson's book, Just Mercy, and
good book.
When I say that book changed my life, it did. But we're not here to talk about Brian Stevenson. But if you're listening,
it's a good book.
It's a great book. In any event, all of that is to say, I just spent a lot of time reading about it, and it made me so mad. So I would like you to speak. I know that's not what that chapter is like largely about, but like I would love for you to speak about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean that chapter is about a really fascinating case that turned out to be a pivotal moment in American legal history, especially the separation of church and state, religious freedom. It's called the Employment Division v. Smith, and it's probably one of the most misunderstood cases out there. And if you ask, especially if you ask like law professors or lawyers who have done this work to describe that case, I think you would get, if you ask 15 different law professors, I think you get 15 different answers probably. Some of them would be close, but that case is basic. The premise of that case was there were two drug counselors who were working at a private drug counseling facility. And that drug counselor had a policy that its drug counselors had to totally abstain from drugs or alcohol. Now, that's probably a bad policy. Maybe we don't not maybe the smartest, maybe doesn't go with the data, but there's no doubt that a private drug counseling facility can adopt that policy for its employees. That is permissible. And
it's permissible. It's not good.
It may not be smart. And this is also in the late
80s
when they're doing this. So they may not have had quite the data that we do these days. And so they knew that was a rule. They signed papers saying that they understood that rule. One of them was a recovering alcoholic and a Native American. One of them was a recovering alcoholic and a white dude who just was like really kind of obsessed at the time with Native American culture.
I'm sorry. I keep interrupting you. I would love if you would speak a little bit, because like I think that I have a decent understanding, but I could be wrong, and I think that maybe a lot of people don't. I don't think people understand the sort of rate or severity of addiction, especially as it relates to alcohol, on Native American or indigenous reservations.
Yeah, I don't have the expertise to speak to that, other than I know that it's
high.
It is very high, and comparatively very high. I did while I was a Grand Canyon tour guide. Actually, I had a number of friends I lived in Flagstaff, Arizona, which is very close to the Navajo reservation, and I had several friends out there. And I mean, it was notable how high it was.
And I mean, and there are reasons for it that have nothing to do with them as people. It is everything to do with external circumstances, situations, policies, and all of that. I just think that when we're talking about a Native American or an indigenous person who is a recovering alcoholic and is in this role, you really need to sort of consider all of these things.
Yeah.
And yes, also suicide rates. Yes.
Yeah, you do it. And I mean, and I do try to tease some of that out in the book without being an expert.
Sorry.
And I mean, it's a fascinating and awful history too, right? Like the American relationship, which is that's a charitable term with our indigenous population. So you have these two guys, drug counselors, in recovery at this private organization, and the white guy decides he's going to do peyote. He's not a practitioner of the Native American religion. He just kind of wants to try it. He does, and he gets fired because he was a drug counselor that did drugs. Sure. And it's a pretty kind of uncontroversial thing to have happen.
Right.
And he doesn't sue his employer for firing him. He doesn't have, like a race-based claim. He doesn't have a religion-based claim because he's not part of this religion. But he does apply for unemployment. And he gets denied because he was fired for cause. Now, this actually goes back to Reagan and some of the shitty.
I told y'all.
Right? The shitty economic policies. Like this is the era of the welfare queen. Like scaring and all, like the idea that all these people are on the public dole, and if we didn't have such...
in Econ 101, my teacher saying, if you take nothing else away from this class, take this away. Your politicians have no idea, no understanding of economics, and they're the ones making policy.
Yeah.
And I will be damned if she wasn't right.
Oh,
she wasn't right.
100% right. So you have,
and that's how they want it because it benefits the rich. Like that's how they want it.
So
you're
you
just fucking stupid. Sorry, Andrew. I'm just.
You're both correct. So I mean, but the point being, right? You have a guy who took drugs knowing that it was against the rules, got fired, doesn't get unemployment because he's fired for cause, and our unemployment. I mean, it's those
nightmare
policies, and they're draconian. They're draconian too. I mean, so like, why don't we let's just help everybody who's out of work? How about that?
Listen, the government wants you to die. Like if you don't, Andrew knows that. If y'all don't know that, the government wants you to die. Sorry to break the news to you.
But so as that's happening, Al Smith, who's the Native American in this story, sees it happening and is kind of like, no, I don't know about this. I'm a Native American and you're telling me I can't do peyote?
Interesting.
Fuck you. And so he ends up deciding to kind of do it more as like a protest. And he has like, he talks with his employer and he like notifies them, I'm going to do this. And they're like, don't do it. And he's like, I'm going to do it. And does, and also gets fired for cause. And because he's fired for cause, he's also denied unemployment. And he has a very good religious freedom claim, or religious discrimination claim, against his employer, possibly a racial discrimination claim against his employer. But he too opts not to sue his employer and instead just goes for the unemployment. And what both of these guys do is then, instead of suing their employer, they turn around and sue the state for denying them unemployment. And they claim religious freedom eventually. And it's a pretty unremarkable thing that this whole case centers around two drug counselors who got fired for doing drugs from their private drug counseling facility. And that is the unremarkable claim at the heart of the Employment Division v. Smith case. And there's so much else, so many external crazy things that happen that conspire to make this like just one of the most explosive cases that we've had at the Supreme Court, including, I mean, just to your earlier point, like a couple of cases where the Supreme Court just completely screws Native Americans and the indigenous population.
Yeah,
and
I'm shocked.
Yes, you're shocked to hear that. I know. And so like, and if those things hadn't happened, anyway, I get into all. It's really fascinating. It's really awful. And then Justice Scalia writes the opinion for the Supreme Court, and he has.
I don't believe in hell. I don't.
He believed in a literal devil. Did you know that?
I did. Also, so for those of you that don't know, many of you probably do, I live with an attorney, and I've lived with him since he was going through law school, when Scalia was still alive. And the reverence with which people treated Scalia's like ideas and rulings, even though they were dog shit, was quite frankly offensive to me personally.
I mean, he was a bigot. And it came through.
And that's what, because I want to bring up one of Jagazis's comments really quickly.
I'm so sorry, Andrew, because I just keep interrupting with my outrage.
Well, but we all know that Reagan was the worst, so why don't we go get in there and undo every law and executive decision?
Because it benefits the people that are in power.
And I was like, well, but the problem is we don't all know it. Like on the left, we know it. People who are politically literate understand this, but the religious right worship Reagan. Like, when I mentioned to my dad that I thought that Reagan was one of the worst presidents we've ever had, he was shocked, because that's one of his favorites of all time.
That's because those people think that trickle-down economics is actually an economic theory. Take Econ 101. I am begging you. Sorry, like, I do feel really bad because this is supposed to be Andrew's like interview or like pushing his book, and I want to do that, but like, Jesus Christ,
we're talking about the book. Like, all of this
is all related.
None of this is
Take Econ 101.
No, and
like the first week of Econ 101, you learn that like this doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as trickle down. Nothing trickles down when it comes to this nonsense. I'm not even going to jump into all of that, but like, Jesus Christ, the absolute ignorance of... Anyway, the absolute ignorance. Okay, I'm going to stop.
They want to keep people ignorant because they're easy to control. Like, they're easy to be able to push these because capitalism depends on poor workers to exploit. So they need to keep this system going by whatever means. I mean, that's a big part of the component that I feel like a lot of people haven't talked about with the abortion discussion, is that they're trying to say, oh, no, but we need to focus on the economy. It's an economy issue. Like, abortion can directly impact the economy, and we're about to see it in a really powerful way. But it's like, it's all connected. It's all, I mean, the Second Amendment has racist origins. Our law enforcement and justice system, all of it has racist origins. I know, Andrew, you shared it, but Jess, have you seen this where they surveyed the U.S. sheriffs on their position?
They think they have like more power than like the president. Yeah. So like, again, not to push another interview, but if y'all have not seen my interview with Alex Vitale, please go watch it. Yes. He wrote the End of Policing. Please. I mean, like, I hate the police personally. And we can talk about that at a different time, perhaps, when it's someone else. All I can say is that like one of the last cops that pulled me over asked me on a date.
That is wildly inappropriate.
That's all I'm going to say about that. But yeah, like, yes, there's a ton of problems with our police system. There's a ton of problems with our legal system, in that like the power that the district attorney has over any number of things, and just the way they're elected. It's just, the whole thing is a problem. But like, that's not what the book is about. But if you want to hear me rage, just ask me about it anytime. Anytime, day or night, here for you. I lost what I was gonna say. It was about the police or something like that. Sorry,
we got onto it. We got onto it because of Scalia. Because Scalia is generally
but awful. You were talking about. I think you were going to say that.
I think you were going to say that Scalia is burning in hell, Jess. And I was going to say, I always feel dirty because Scalia wrote the opinion in this case, and like, for the most part, he got it right, which feels so weird and gross to say.
I just saw this meme today that was like that feeling when the worst person in the world has the right opinion or something, and it's just this guy that's just like so upset, and I was like, oof.
but so the one thing that Scalia did, like, he could not resist, like, with like, you know, I mean, this is what you were talking about. He had a poison pen, and he couldn't resist throwing all this extra awful language in the last two paragraphs of his opinion. And these paragraphs, they're basically, I describe them in the book as a fuck you to minorities, and that's what they are. And that those two paragraphs then act like a bomb on this like noxious, toxic mixture of external factors that were swirling around this case, and ignite it. And there's this firestorm, and you get like the country like basically all banding together to strike down this opinion, which just really said that two drug counselors who were fired for doing drugs, and that means they were fired for cause, can't get unemployment. Like, which is like a very, again, uncontroversial opinion. Yeah, it's and like if you ask people that question, like 99 out of 100 are like, yeah, I mean, it's not great, but yeah, that's right.
I don't love it, but it's pretty clear. Like,
and anyway, and then you get coming out of that, you get something called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which is something that today, along with religious freedom itself, has just been weaponized against LGBTQ Americans and basically all of us to favor the white conservative Christians theology, I guess I'll say, which maybe a misnomer there.
Before we get to questions and super chats, because I don't want to keep you super, super late. I mean, I do, because this is a fascinating conversation, but also I feel like you probably need to sleep. But eventually at some point.
Slightly exhausted.
Yeah. I mean, whatever.
Doing all right.
Yeah, it's fine. I don't care. No, I do care. So I'd like to respect your time in some way. Boring. I'd love for you to. So something that I have been thinking about, just sort of broadly, and I say this is kind of a joke, but it's also true. The Trump presidency aged me 15 years, I think. Yes. It was so stressful and exhausting and painful. And sometimes I think that because it was just this constant onslaught of horribleness and just, I don't even know a word, it was just awful every day, all the time for 4 years. We sort of forget the impact that some of the rulings that happened, and I'm not saying these rulings are a direct result of Trump necessarily, but he certainly had something to do with them. And I think you probably know what I'm getting at. But when we talk about things like the Muslim ban, right? Yeah. We forget, when you have 900 things in a row that are terrible happening, it's hard to keep up with all of them. It's hard to track or trace the impact of all of them. And it's hard to remember that these things happened and that those decisions have sort of this ripple effect across time, even when we've forgotten about them because we're just trying to tread water with the next terrible thing.
You're so right about that.
So I was hoping you might speak a little bit about that before we get to some of the questions.
Yeah, well, I'll say a couple things about that.
We shouldn't forget about that.
So, I mean, this is
talking about midterms, because we're 6 days away. But go ahead, Andrew.
First that's one of the reasons I wanted to write the book, right? Is I wanted to write the book because it is so hard to keep track of how much is happening. And I think it's especially true of the law because the media tends to cover these cases as one-offs, as a dispute between a bakery and a gay couple. And it has no relevance beyond that, except maybe in the news story, they'll talk about how it could have a broader impact, not placing that case in this overarching assault that is being coordinated by the same few groups that are taking these cases and setting up so their friends on the Supreme Court can then come and knock them down.
And also it's creating this precedent. It's not just exactly. Sorry, just like Jageza said, it's not, and this is not me talking to Andrew. He knows obviously far better than I do. But these again are not one-off cases where it's hey, I decided this, and therefore this one bakery doesn't have to make this cake for this couple, right? This is a precedent being set that people can use their religion to discriminate in the business world because of someone's sexual orientation. And I feel those are the things that get lost, especially in the media. But I will cede the floor. Sorry.
Hi, Puppy. But no, I mean, that's actually crucial because then the court deliberately builds on those cases. And as do the Crusaders, these groups themselves, every time the door gets cracked open, as it is in Jess's back wall right there, they come through and they kick it open more and more and more. And that is constantly what is happening. I mean, that's the way they've orchestrated this crusade. So that's one thing. And one of the reasons I really wanted to touch on or to put each of these cases in context. So I include, chapters on the COVID cases, which people have almost forgotten about, but they overturned a century of precedent. Oh, hi.
Sorry.
No, that's always okay. I mean, and so I all of the cases that you forgot about are in this book, and all the cases that you remember and actually remember wrong are in this book too.
I just didn't want to go through every single case and be like, hey, can you just tell us everything in your book without us buying the book? Is that possible?
I could do
You
that.
could
Well, this
do
is also
that. No,
it's one of the but one
buy
of the
the
hardest
book.
things about the book too was that every one of the chapters could have been a standalone book. You could write it.
Right.
You could write an entire book about each of them, and it makes it difficult. And I'll say this too.
That's actually going to be his
unrelated.
retirement. That's going to be what keeps him young. Is he's going to take each one of those
No,
chapters.
I thought it was eating
absolutely
babies.
not. Don't promise any of that.
When he retires, he's going to have a wife. Like, he has a wife right now, but when he retires, he'll actually have a wife.
That's a fair point. I'll be at the Grand Canyon.
I don't know who your wife is, but shout out.
My wife is an awesome attorney who does church-state separation. She's a co-host of the We Dissent podcast, which I would really recommend that everybody listen to. It's one of the best podcasts out there.
So you can completely say no. Are you comfortable sharing her name for people to look her up or no?
Yeah, I mean, she's not on social media or anything like that, but her name's Elizabeth Cavell, and she is one of the co-hosts of the We Dissent podcast. And if you listen to that, you'll see how big a badass she is.
Elizabeth Cavell.
Cavell.
I was like that. Wait, sorry, it's too perfect. It's too perfect. Just give this woman. Anyway. Sorry, I was like that.
Put her on the Supreme Court.
Exactly. We're not holding hearings. No one needs to confirm this woman.
Muslim ban.
Yeah, I mean, but like the Muslim ban is one of the cases that I think people remember, and the Masterpiece Cake Shop case is one of the cases that I think people remember. But there are so many cases that came up, especially in the religious freedom arena, and especially in the state church arena, that came up during the Trump years that I think people don't remember. I mean, the Supreme Court forced taxpayers in Missouri to fund a children's ministry. People don't remember that. They don't, and when they do remember it, they don't understand that is what actually happened in the case. They think of it as a case about a playground.
It was just an onslaught. It's hard to keep track.
And they don't realize that Josh Hawley was involved in that.
Oh yeah,
fuck Josh Hawley, that weasel ass looking bitch. Anyway,
I found out tonight. I found out tonight that he wrote a book on manhood that is coming out next year.
He did.
It's called Manhood. And I found the cover. It's the most hilarious thing. Like, you ran away. You're like, everybody thinks of you as the dude who ran away and you're writing a book on manhood.
You look like a rodent. How are you writing a book on manhood, my guy?
My brother in Christ. Picture of him, like,
my brother and his
wife, and neither of them
different cause
experience.
No, I haven't seen that.
Sorry.
Oh my gosh. I'll have to
his wife, both of them were clerks for Chief Justice John Roberts. He and his wife.
Dude, I wept many a time watching the Josh Hawley sort of running to any number of songs.
I spent so much time watching those videos.
Tears, real tears, and I don't laugh for real that often at things. Not like a belly laugh, can't control it, laugh. And I was weak, dude. Because that man was scamper.
The creativity, the internet, I felt really came through in that moment.
Internet is undefeated.
I watched so much footage from January 6th that was so awful and haunting and frankly downright terrifying. And then I don't remember. I mean, that was much later. I mean, that was I feel like that was maybe February of this year.
It felt healing in a lot of ways.
It really did. Right. I believe that.
It didn't make anything better, but it felt healing. That's all.
I must have watched 50, maybe 100 different videos. I guess it's the same video, just different soundtracks. And I appreciate
me trying to show the attorney that I live with, all of these videos, and he was like, haha, it's very funny. And I was like, no, it is very funny. Laugh. It's really funny.
Laugh.
It's funny. It was God, all I'll say is this: the internet is undefeated, and the only hope I have left in this world is y'all fucking weirdos. Okay. Sorry. Please continue. I've interrupted you for the 957th time. Please forgive me.
Well, I'll throw this out there before we go into midterms, because I also have this, and this has nothing to do with the book, but I have a theory about the Trump years. About we mark time in a number of different ways. Sunrise, sunset. We mark it with days of the week, seasons, things like this. But we also mark it unconsciously with, I think, big events, things that happened. Do you remember when this happened? Do you remember when that happened? Do you remember? And during the Trump years, it was not one thing happening every 2 weeks, but 3 or 4 things happening every day. And I really do think that aged all of us significantly. Like, it's not like I think that actually played
when
a
the
role.
Trump era started, I was still a pretty devout Christian, and I leaned conservative. Just socially, I didn't really understand the politics because I was pretty politically illiterate. But halfway through, I was like literally the day after Trump won, I knew that voting for him was a giant mistake, because I saw how emboldened all the Christian nationalists were, and they were like talking about how this presidency was going to humble him. I don't think I've ever told you this, that like the day after, the Christians in my life were talking about how he was going to be so humbled. And I was like, based on what? Like, are we looking at the same person? Like, he literally said he was going to grab women because he could.
That prophecy did not pan out.
No, it didn't. But like, oh my gosh. Okay, yeah, we are getting some super chats about like what we can do, and so we do. I think it's important to. Heathen Queen, you are muted, dear. My delightful queen. I can unmute you.
I think it's probably it's a hardware thing on her end, is my guess.
Okay, so I'm gonna then, while she's figuring this out, I don't know why, because it says like an actual mute button, but okay, so
considering the current threat level, why isn't Biden, packing the Supreme Court? Do you think he should? YouTube punk, I would encourage you to pick up a copy of the book American Crusade, available at fine bookstores everywhere. That is one of the solutions that I offer in the book. I think it was a mistake that Biden did not add justices to an expanded.
But he doesn't have enough people to expand.
Sorry, can y'all hear me?
Yes,
we can. Now,
okay,
yes.
great. Continue.
Yes.
Just want to make sure.
Yes, he didn't try though. That's the thing. And there are bills that are up right now. Instead, he punted on it, deliberately punting on it, by forming this commission, which was meant to diffuse the debate around expanding the court, and kick that can down the road. And then it didn't do anything substantive until I think it was 14 months into his first 2 years, and you're getting into a spot where it's difficult to actually do anything at that point.
Another thing, and I don't want to like dwell on this too long, but I just feel like it's important to bring up, because there are lots of people. Yeah,
asking. Sorry, this is Buckets. He's the worst. Anyway,
Buckets.
Continue.
But Buckets is not the worst. He's obviously a very good dog.
He's a demon, but I love him so much.
Hi, Buckets.
Hi, Bucky.
So there are some people, and I'll hear it on the left a lot actually, that will blame our RGB for not stepping down, or RBJ for not stepping down while Obama was president, but they don't actually realize that he never actually had this supermajority. Like, there were things that happened, and like senators.
Like, don't come for my girl. Don't come for my fucking girl in her octogenarian years, trying to fight for your rights with more knowledge than you have ever had in your left pinky. Don't.
Yeah, don't come for Ruth.
I mean, it's not a very realistic argument. I mean, first of all, Mitch McConnell blocked Obama's nominee for Scalia's seat, Merrick Garland.
He technically had a supermajority for like a year, like 2 years, but one of the people were out sick, so he couldn't vote, and so it couldn't have.
McConnell was able to block almost, it was like less than 3. I don't remember the exact number. I apologize. Every one of Obama's judicial nominees in his last 2 years.
I'm going to say this with my entire chest. When Mitch McConnell dies, first of all, I'm going to pop in a bottle of a very expensive champagne, and then I'm going to buy a plane ticket to desecrate his grave. Thank you. I will not explicate on how I'm going to do that. That's none of your business. Will it happen? Yes, it will. Anyway, sorry, please continue. But also, like, his skin is running away from his face, and that's, like, I think all you need to know.
Dude, sometimes things get, we're living in dark times, and sometimes days get hard, but knowing that I will outlive Mitch McConnell keeps me going. Anyway, yeah.
Sorry, Andrew did not sign up for all of this like personal vitriol and rage, but like
I mean, kind of.
He
knows me. You know me. Right?
I
Sorry. Not only do you
into.
know me, you also know I had a real bad day. Came out here swinging.
I'm here for it. Hang in.
Andrew's doing the real work. I am providing the cathartic rage, I feel.
It's important.
Okay, so
yeah, let's
get a super chat.
I know Andrew S. frequently goes on the Opening Arguments podcast. Do you have any plans to co-write anything law-related with Andrew Torres or start a podcast together? So I was just on the Opening Arguments podcast.
Y'all think Andrew has time for another podcast?
I'm not starting a podcast. I have zero desire to start a podcast. Torres and I have actually talked a couple times about writing a few different things, and we have a few things sort of like bouncing around in our text messages and emails. But we've not really settled on anything. I think the thing that we've come closest to settling on, and we talked about reconnecting after my sort of book tour here ends, which will be
come to California.
For people who don't know, I'm going to be in Denver this Saturday, here in Madison, Wisconsin, at the Wisconsin Book Festival, which I'm very excited about in mid-November. It's going to be California, probably in February. And it's Florida, December.
Which part of California in February? Any idea? For a friend. I'm asking for a friend.
Most of it seems to be a Southern California tour at this point in time. Correa is talking about trying to organize a northern.
So we need to both contact the Bay Area humanists.
I'll do it.
So that way, and we need to like lobby for this book and like make a really strong case to be like, we need to get this guy here so that
I'm just gonna tell them that if they don't,
there you go.
But if you
no
are
podcast,
interested,
no podcast. No. Don't get your hopes up. There's no podcast. This is the best you're gonna get.
No, the best you're gonna get is every once. So if you join Andrew's Patreon,
join his Patreon.
Every so often, he'll just record a like 15-minute like thoughts he's had, and he'll just share it with us. And it's like a special podcast.
And I did label that a podcast. Okay, fine. You got me on a really good technicality. All right, you know my content better than I do. Yes, I do that for my patrons, and I have 2 podcast ideas in the hopper. I just gotta wake up one morning with my coffee and put on my podcast voice.
This is not something I've ever thought about or suggested, and it's not something I believe will ever happen, but in my like dream world where everything that I ever want would happen, which quite honestly is the world that I'm working to create, is some kind of podcast with Andrew where he provides you with the education and then I just shit on people like that.
You just rage.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not going to happen, but in my dream world, it would. So
I'm happy to be a frequent guest.
I just want you to do that.
I don't need more responsibilities. Is my
no. I don't want. I'm like, I feel like I need to start a podcast. No one asked this, but I'm just going to let you all know because I haven't eaten today and life. I feel like I need to start some kind of segment, or I don't know if it's a podcast or whatever, probably on YouTube, where I am dissecting, for lack of a better term, the theobrogen content that pops up never ending on my feed. That's all I'll say about that. Next question, please, for Andrew, because it's his show.
Jess, did I tell you that I got blocked by Dale Partridge?
He's a bitch, so yes.
No, but like, did I tell you what I said to make him block me?
No, I don't think so.
No, because he's been going on this rant about how like there aren't enough alpha men in churches, and so churches have become too effeminate. And because
just say you hate women, just say it.
Male leaders, right? So I tweeted, "Why is Dale trying to turn the bride of Christ into a trans man?"
Whenever I hear the name Dale, I think of Dale from King of the Hill, and I'm like, no, that's right. Like that's on brand. But yeah, theobrogen. Like I know you've been urging me to do this for many a year, but I'm actually talking to someone about doing some merch that's like Theobro's tears, because the number of alpha males that are reformed that have blocked me, oof, you know.
I think by definition, you cannot be an alpha male if you call yourself an alpha male. It's like,
because it's based on outdated wolf like psychology that isn't real.
I mean, among other things.
Yeah, but like
real. But it's one of those that it's like the more confident you say you are, the less I believe you. You know,
like if you have to tell me you're a good guy every 5 seconds, like don't come within 55 feet of me or an elementary school. Thank you. It's like, don't. Yeah, I'm sure you're a real good guy, but like also you're probably on an offenders list, so just like go away. Okay, next question, please, because I'm just derailing this. Like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Can you show that the word God in our documents in the deistic sense rather than the Christian deity? Wait, sorry. Can you show that the word God in our documents is in the deistic sense rather than the Christian deity? Read the founding myth. Some think this, and that secularism was only intended to allow different Christian denominations.
So yeah, read the founding myth.
Thank you for your
Well, I mean, I'll elaborate a little bit. First of all, God does not appear in the Constitution. It's a godless document. That one little mention of Year of Our Lord, you can get that article for free on my website if you want.
You should read it. It's good.
It's a super fun dive. The framers had no idea it was there. People are really talking about the Declaration.
Nerdy historian Andrew.
People are really talking about the Declaration of Independence when they're getting into the various mentions there, which is their creator, the laws of nature and of nature's God, divine providence, and supreme judge of the world. And I do a full breakdown in 2 chapters of the founding myth, not only of the Declaration itself, but of each of those 4 mentions. So go get into it, get nerdy.
Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. But really, if you haven't bought the founding myth or read the article on his website, that is quite literally free $99, $0.00.
Also, when we're talking about free 99, if any of you are not able to afford to buy a book, like even like the Kindle versions are like $10, but if you want a physical book and you can't afford the like $25, $30, whatever it is, ask your library to get it, and then not only read it, but then tell other people to go to the library and read it.
It's also, by the way, like if you're in this space and trying to support authors who like this is like one of the best things you can do is ask libraries to go get their
Actually,
books.
I do want to bring this up really quickly because it's not also evolution is telling you something, but the free market is also telling you something. The free market that they love so much.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you a thing. Baby. It's called supply and demand. You have the demand, we have the supply, and it's scarce over here in these streets. On that note, next question, please.
Alrighty, so
I believe that the lack of religious separation is going to get worse for Americans until the USA reaches a breaking point. Maybe your Supreme Court will be abolished. With any, I don't think that it will. I'm not an expert, but like I wish that it would. Andrew, please.
I mean, this is the burn it down thing that we were kind of like talking / joking about earlier. I mean, there's 2 things that come to mind. Like one is we sort of already talked about it. It is the court has been captured and packed already. Like that has happened. There was a hostile takeover of our Supreme Court orchestrated by the extreme Christian wing of the Republican Party. Christian nationalists are on the U.S. Supreme Court right now. That is a thing that's happening. That's awful, and that's why we're getting these decisions. But the second piece of that puzzle is the institution itself. And we sort of danced around this earlier when we were talking about the Warren Court and maybe the early Burger Court and Brown versus Board, and how that was the moment in our court's history when it was like doing the right thing, and it was the court that we think of as the Supreme Court, that we have in our minds as the defender of the downtrodden and the vindicator of minority rights. But that is the outlier, the historical outlier for that court as an institution, for that institution, period. I mean, really, this is the court of Plessy versus Ferguson and separate is equal. This is the court of Dred Scott and fugitive slave laws, of trying to suffocate the New Deal in the cradle, of gutting the power of the 14th Amendment that I mentioned already, of Japanese internment camps, of Muslim bans, of billionaires and political gerrymandering and vote suppression, and of course now of abolishing abortion in the name of their narrow religious beliefs. What the court is doing as an institution is returning to the mean. And I mean, that does bode for some serious institutional reform.
That's not going to happen, but it's a nice thought.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's a really nice thought, but
just like, listen.
I don't know what was nice about that thought. I mean, it was pretty bleak.
Just like meet me back.
Sorry, the thought of like the Supreme Court being abolished and like burning everything to the fucking ground, so that we're not dealing with like
metaphorically.
Metaphorically, except for like 3 justices
that
I would metaphorically not do that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, we're not.
Sotomayor, like.
Sotomayor is, by the way, like.
The most vicious I get is with my words. All right,
phenomenal jurist. Like, she's just
Sotomayor is brilliant. Like,
she's fantastic. I kept, when I was I would be like writing the chapters of American Crusade, and I'm like, how am I going to put this? And I'll go read the dissent of the case that I'm working on. It's like, just all right, just copy and paste Sotomayor over.
She said it here first.
Yeah.
All right. Are there more super chats or questions? Sorry, I just realized it's getting late and I'm just rambling. Would love to hear Andrew's thoughts about the midterms and what may happen if there is a large portion of conservative candidates who don't concede and or refuse to leave office. I personally dissent. No.
So I'm going to break this question up into a few different things. One, I'm very worried about the prospect of political violence in the midterms. I think we're going to see some. I mean, I think we've already seen some, actually.
Yeah.
Paul Pelosi anyone?
I think that's going to happen. It's a question of how bad it will be.
The severity. Yeah.
I am, to a certain extent, less worried about it than I was 2 years ago, but also to a certain extent more worried that they're the other sides. They are more fervent, and they have fallen much farther down their rabbit holes. They are emboldened. However, cutting against that is that they do not hold the important levers of power the way they did when Trump was in office on January 6th itself. That they don't control the military, for instance.
Right.
So if you do get conservative candidates who don't concede or refuse to leave office, Joe Biden is still the president and still in charge of the military. So, but come next presidential election, that's a lot scarier. Okay, so that's one piece of that. The second,
super cool, happy, fun times. Okay.
Yes, yeah, really, really excited. And the second piece is fuck the polls. I'll just put a period on that. The third is
full stop.
Voting is literally the least you can do. And I know people have heard me say that before, but I cannot stress it enough. Voting is literally the least you can do. There are 6 days left. You can still absolutely make a difference by volunteering, by texting, by donating, by knocking on doors. If you don't know how to do that, that doesn't matter. There's plenty of places that'll teach you. Go to votesaveamerica.com. You can sign up. They'll help you do it. Vote early and give people rides to the polls on election day if you can. There's a million different things you can do to help. We are staring down the barrel of fascism and authoritarianism in this country. Voting is the first step, not the end, not the end results. You do nothing magical when you go into the voting booth and fill out your ballot. It matters hugely. But it is not the end of the road. It gives us the opportunity to make a change. So you can't go into that voting booth, cast your ballot, and then dust off your hands and think you're done. right? If you do that, and if you expect that to give you all the change that you want and get to the progressive society you want, you are going to be disappointed forever.
Yeah, I want to say this.
The other thing that, so Jess here is saying that she took the 8th off work just to give people rides. Also think of parents, because parents who have young kids, if you can even, you know, like reach out to parents and be like, hey, do you need me to watch your kids so you can go vote?
Yeah. I do want to say this. So as someone who grew up very conservative, very Republican, whatever, and who also grew up in a society that was very much tainted with this idea that, like, especially living in California, right? Like, your vote doesn't really matter. Like, it's always going to go Democratic, like, whatever. It matters. And, like, it's something that I've only picked up in recent years, where before I was like, who cares, whatever, it's fine. Like, my state's going to go where my state goes. And I want to encourage folks to not buy in to that sort of, I don't know what the word is, not lethargy, but like, don't buy in to apathy. Don't buy into the apathy, right? Like, that's what they want. And I understand how easy it is, especially if you live in a state that is like largely blue or largely red or largely whatever, but like, there is not a way to initiate that change that doesn't start with a vote, right? I mean, it starts with something else, right? We're all talking to people, we're all doing whatever, but like, the first powerful active step that we can take is showing up to vote and making sure that our voice counts, and then continuing the work. And again, as someone that I live in Oakland, California. I live in the heart of the Bay Area. Like, it would be very easy for me to say, like, it's gonna go blue, so who cares? But it's being an involved, concerned citizen, and it matters.
Well, it matters in this election more than most. I mean, we're talking the midterms here, when people don't vote that much. I mean, one vote here is worth more than in other elections, really, which is, I mean, sad and kind of stupid in a way. But I mean, there's also I'm going to pull it up because I want to get it right. I want to get this quote right. The last thing I want to make here is that I know a lot of people think their vote doesn't matter, but the other side is desperate to stop you from voting.
Why?
And that's because they know that your vote matters. Yep. And the quote that I wanted to pull up is the Paul Weyrich quote, because this ties in with what we were talking about with the book earlier. I mean, Paul Weyrich said this at a conference called, I believe it was the Religious Roundtable. It was the National Affairs briefing at the Religious Roundtable. Phyllis Schlafly was there. Tim LaHaye, who started the Council for National Policy.
Not the Left Behind.
The Left Behind, Tim LaHaye. Oh, he's like a crazy Christian nationalist who started the Council for National Policy, which is like probably the most powerful right-wing organization that most people have never heard of.
But it's like the same guy. Am I right?
It's the same guy. Yeah, same guy. Yeah. Along with Pat Robertson, Jerry Falwell, and your favorite Jess, Ronald Reagan, were all at this.
Y'all, please go watch the Jerry Falwell documentary on YouTube. It is a soap opera. It is a historical documentary. Like, it is so many things. It knocked my fucking Christian socks off.
So this is several thousand lay preachers from 41 states, 2-day gathering, and Paul Weyrich, who, I mean, this is the guy who founded ALEC. He founded the Heritage Foundation, and he is there and he says this: I don't want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by the majority of people.
Wait, isn't Weyrich from the
beginning of our country?
Sorry. This might just be me misremembering, but isn't Weyrich the guy that was like, listen, segregation is not going to work. Let's do abortion.
He was in the room with Falwell. Yeah, I mean, like, he was in that meeting when they.
But like, he was the political operative that was like, listen, this is not going to work.
He's the guy who gave the moral majority its name. He used that phrase, and then Jerry Falwell was like, "That's it." I mean, so then this is him saying to a huge crowd of people, not hiding it: I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by the majority of people. They have not been from the beginning of our country. They are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in elections goes up as the voting populace goes down. And the hour in that infamous quote was Christians. I mean, he's talking about Christians in that. I mean, he's talking about what we would call Christian nationalists today. I mean, I don't want it. They do not want you to vote because your vote is the only thing that matters. So, I mean, you can let them win if you want.
I mean, otherwise, why would
you can let them win
Roe versus Harper? Like, no, not Roe versus Harper. Moore versus Harper. Like, I mean, that's coming, and it's going to be bloody, and I think people need to be prepared for it. It is going to get much, much worse before it gets better. So if anyone is expecting for you to be able to vote and then just be able to be like, well, I voted, so Biden just needs to make it work. It's like, no, that's like how it works.
Before we sort of go over and out on this podcast, or sorry, not podcast, on this stream, two things. I do want Andrew to plug all of his books, whatever, all of the things, right? I want that. The other thing is, and I don't remember the name of the case, but I know there is a case upcoming, I think, in which the Supreme Court will be allowed to sort of decide, it's kind of like gerrymandering.
Moore versus Harper.
Exactly, like where it's like, yeah, we can vote this way versus like, or not versus, but you can vote this way based on where you are. Like,
what it is the independent state. No, it's the independent state legislature doctrine, and that is, it's not a doctrine or a theory. What I mean, that all that is, okay. The best way to think of that case and what that is, when you hear independent state legislature doctrine or theory, you think of January 6th dressed up in a judge's robe. That's what it is. All it is allowing state legislatures to overturn the results of free and fair elections and say, nah, people voted. We don't care. We're going to go ahead and decide who won that election. That's what it will allow.
Mm-hmm.
Love that for me personally.
Yeah. All right. Some people like Mastriano has already said, it doesn't matter how the state of Pennsylvania votes. I'm going to, select that.
I need to go meditate, to be honest. It's a lot. Are there any more super chats? Any more questions before we cede the floor to Andrew and his like plug and also sleep? I don't know. Andrew has a shirt that says "Bring on the matriarchy," so I'm gonna let him answer.
It's in the mail. I do not yet.
I had a feeler. I had a feeler that was coming.
I ordered it. Yeah, I ordered it. How do we feminize the patriarchy, but make them think it was their idea? We gotta let the men's think it was their idea. I mean, I don't know. It's just that this like Josh Hawley's writing a book called Manhood. I mean, like I don't know how it's
like just, you could not parody this shit. You could not parody this shit. Sorry, you could not parody Josh Hawley, the chicken with his head cut off, fucking squawk boxing across the road, as manhood. Like, what are you smoking? I would like some.
Hilarious too.
I can't wait because that's gonna be because I hope that Elon hasn't just completely destroyed Twitter by then, because the internet.
I need the responses. I need the responses.
Yeah. Need to start an account on Tribal so that.
I mean, I think like you can go look at the cover on Amazon right now, and
the cover is horrifying and also
it's compensatory. It's compensatory, yeah. But I think like people might want to design their own covers. Maybe I would like to see those.
My butt cheeks clench. That's all I can say. I don't know. It's just like a very strong like reaction. Can't explain. I will not explain.
End it on a note of like what you've said on some of the other streams of that, like, ultimately like where they are selfish.
Wait, you want hope? You want hope?
It doesn't
inject some hope into your veins? I mean,
not I.
No, I mean, look,
listen. This is your hope. Andrew has thirst traps. Okay, that's it. There's a hope for you. Don't ask me for anything more. Don't say I never gave you anything. That's it.
Look, did I model maybe once upon a time?
Did I model in college?
Who
maybe.
Can say?
Who knows?
Nobody
TikTok.
Knows.
Knows. We have the receipts, bro.
Somebody knows. Like 70,000 people know, but
I don't think so. Well, look, I mean, I do have.
I don't think so.
I do have hope, actually, and it's got nothing to do with my TikTok account.
Sorry.
No, I mean. And the reason that I have
no. Sorry. Sorry.
What?
Sorry.
Just shut up and say it.
Nope, can't. It's my show. I'm gonna do what I want. Did someone write erotica about Andrew Seidel and Ken Ham? I can't say, but yes.
That is
mean
a
Ken
true fact.
Ham and a Seidel man?
Yeah, that is a true fact that exists. It was written by somebody who I presume pseudonymously.
Anonymous.
Justin Beavers. Is the pen name of that scribe. And yeah, I believe I was in
This is
April
the hope
sometime.
we need. I'm not gonna lie. I know y'all want some like
His
realistic
butt also
hope, but
has a
all I'm
Twitter
here to
account.
offer is just like hardy har hars. That's it.
His butt also has a Twitter account.
Yeah. Does he know where it comes from? Does he know where it go? No.
I don't know who wrote the book. I
Cotton
don't
Eye
know
Joe.
who runs the butt Twitter account, but those are real things that have.
Y'all are
happened.
weird. FYI. If you're running a Twitter account based on his butt and he doesn't know about it, y'all are fucking weird and you need.
I mean, I
therapy.
know about it. I just don't know who it is. I know.
No, you know about it, but like you weren't on a part. There was no consent here.
No, no.
And we
just
are
like-
consent based.
Andrew, if I write this
Can
book,
I-
are you gonna think I'm the weirdest person ever? And he was like, yes, but do it.
No,
Yes, but
I to my knowledge, I've not met Justin Beavers, the real Justin Beavers, the person behind the Beavers. I've never met, to my knowledge.
Okay, moving right along. Are you a cat or a dog person?
Dogs
Yeah,
all
Beavers.
dogs all the way.
Dogs
all the way.
forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Cool.
Andrew,
Favorite flavor of ice cream? Quickly.
Ooh, I mean, that one's hard because listen, we have a place here in Madison, Wisconsin called the Chocolate Shop, which is like out of this world epic. Like their nutritional information when you ask is they're like literally don't ask. They're like if you want, it says if you want nutrition, go eat carrots.
I don't want it. Exactly.
And
I don't want it.
They have so many good flavors. But they have one called Exhausted Parent that's got booze in it that's like really good.
I respect that.
Sounds amazing.
All right,
So
last question. Oh wait, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, just my favorite ice cream is this brown butter bourbon truffle ice cream that is just out of this world.
My favorite ice cream is the one that's in my fridge that I didn't have to go buy.
There you go.
Sincerely, I'm lazy as shit. Last question, actually.
Mm-hmm.
If you could design a perfect day, and you can keep it PG. You can, you don't have to, but you can. You don't have to, but you can. I'm going to leave that up to you. What would that day look like?
Oh, wow. I mean, I feel like that maybe that's a podcast episode for my thing. I'll keep it PG. I'll keep it PG. I mean, and I'll other than spending lots and lots of time with my kids and my family, and like glorious meals and booze on that front. Like other
what
things
else
that
is there?
I love getting up early with like a fantastic cup of coffee and writing and seeing the sun come up out my window, which I get to do every day.
Are you one of those people that does like a Chemex and is like,
no.
let me brew this individual cup of coffee with my 17 kids?
No, I set my time. Fuck that. I set my timer. I grind the beans the night before. Like they're sitting out there for 10 hours before, no, I don't have time for that. I mean, the only reason I get up at 5 in the morning is like, I have to find time to do that and to write. Other things that I do.
I have 0 kids and I still wake up at that time because otherwise all the shit that I need to do doesn't get done. So like I sincerely don't understand how you do it. So like mad respect.
I especially with how little sleep that I know you get on a regular basis because you're going like it's because this isn't even your day job.
Yeah.
Wild.
Well, I do. I mean, I do have a day job. Yeah, that would not be. I love my job, but that would not be part of my perfect day. I do love my job. I would do some woodworking. I actually do a lot of that.
Photography in my living room too.
I don't really talk about.
I woodwork together. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I've made some things, including the table, but that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I really could spend a lot of time in the shop. And I mean, I love being outdoors. I absolutely love hiking. I have two amazing dogs.
That is a big watch.
Moose and bear. I mean, it's my hiking. It's my activity watch. It's a what, I don't know how you say it. It's got the
room for
the double 2 U's. The Suntos. I'll go with Sunto. But yeah, I got it so I can
that's
run,
a big
bike,
watch.
swim.
That's
all
what she said. Yeah, he's a triathlete. You didn't know it, but
no,
I'm telling
not
you.
yet. But that's
You will
maybe
be.
on the list.
I can feel that's on the horizon because somehow you do
Seems
so
like
much in like 24 hours, like more than I do in like an entire week. It's amazing.
Seems like it might be. So I mean, those would be parts of the day.
You're doing quote unquote the Lord's work, not like the literal Lord, but like what's important.
Doing the Queen's work, all right.
There you go.
Thank you so much. Yes.
It was my pleasure.
So I will say this.
Final words you want to say this?
Yes, I want to let Andrew close out this podcast. I just want to say that I have overrun this episode with my thoughts and feelings. But big thanks to Andrew for being a solid friend and also for being a solid force in this world that is trying to offset some of the most pressing issues that we have today. And we joked a lot, we did, but like I actually don't know how you get all of this done in a day. I don't know how you manage to keep up with a family and multiple children and your career and also all these interviews. Like, and I'm on your Patreon, so I've seen all the interviews you have scheduled. I don't know. And you are incredibly good-natured and generous and kind, and like we all appreciate you so much for that.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate
and you
that.
are a solid friend who I dumped all of my emotional bullshit on about 20 minutes before this show.
That's not emotional bullshit. That's emotions. That's like, fucking life.
This is the worst.
I mean, this is literally like, I mean, especially for us, like I'm assigned female at birth, you are a woman, like our lives are on the line. Like it's just how it is. Like
So thank you for doing what you do. And Andrew, would you like to close out the show with anything else? Anything you want to push, talk about, etc.?
Very quickly, before he does that, if anyone has not seen Dan McKellen's TikTok from today, it is like under a minute, so it's a longer TikTok, but it was so beautiful because he literally just Dennis Prager's intentional misrepresentation of the Lutz study. He tore that apart, and it was glorious. So,
hi Dan,
homework
we love you here. Yeah. All right, Andrew. So I'm going to say this. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for subscribing, liking, sending me whatever you do, money, cookies, making baby Jesus cry. I love y'all so much. I'm going to go eat for the first time today. But before I do, I'm going to let Andrew close out the show with whatever thoughts, feelings that he has. Andrew, take it away.
Yeah. I'll say, please go pick up a copy of the book. I don't care if you buy it. Go get it from your library. Read The Founding Myth if you haven't. Also at your library.
Buy both of them, you cheap bitches. No, sorry.
I do. Just kidding. I do have hope. I really do. I know it's a scary fucking time right now. It really is, and I'm right there with you. But the one thing I do take hope. There are two things actually I take hope from. One is the demographics. They're changing. They're shifting rapidly in our favor, and that is part of what is driving their movement. And their wins in all of the cases that I include in American Crusade, all of the wins that we are seeing, their wins swell our rank. And they're creating this feedback loop. So I mean, again, they're driving their own demographic loss because white Christian nationalists are working to privilege the chosen few. So every victory that they notch alienates more people. It wakes more people up to the danger, and it drives more people into our waiting arms. So their power-hungry aggression is actually growing our movement. And so I do believe that in the end, we will win because they fight only for themselves. And where they are selfish, we are selfless. So in the end, I truly believe we will triumph. It's going to be a long, hard road, but we will get there. And we'll get there together.
And I know that I said I was going to let Andrew close out the show, but I just want to do what I do. I can't help it. Yeah. When I was speaking to Julie Ingersoll the other day, I asked her, like, what can we do? What gives you hope? This sort of like existential question that we ask all of our guests who are working in this field. And she said, you know, I don't really have an answer, but I was talking to my friend who was a progressive Christian, and I asked her this question, and she didn't know, but her husband chimed in and said, the hope that exists is you both. It's the folks that made it out. It's the folks that changed their mind. It's the folks that were deeply indoctrinated and managed to, in one way or another, change. Because that means it's possible.
Yeah.
That means it's possible, right? And I think like that's an important thing to remember in all of this, is that like it seems really hopeless. And it seems that way to me too, because you talk to people and you're just like, what the fuck? But then I remember that like at one time this was the same shit that I was dedicated to, and now look at what I do on this platform, right? And now look at what other people do on their platforms, not just me, but people that were as indoctrinated or more indoctrinated than I was, that are now using their voice and their platform and whatever to do the exact opposite. So like, I think that's worth mentioning.
No, I 100% agree with that, and that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying that their wins drive people away from them and into our waiting arms. And I do. I mean, I think that's such a good answer. And I'm trying to remember when I wrote it. Maybe somebody can go find it and share it in the chat. But a few months ago, maybe even a year ago, I'm not sure, I wrote a love letter to ex-evangelicals and people deconstructing.
It made me like so much tears. That was like when I barely knew you, and I was like, oh my God.
I mean, I think
hard.
I think about it often, because it truly is it's such an amazing, both intellectual and emotional feat of strength, you know, emotional strength and intellectual strength, and having the fortitude and courage to question all of these deeply held beliefs. It truly is remarkable, and something that you're taught to shame from a very early age. And really, it's something you ought to be so fucking proud of. And I'm so in awe of. And I often think, and this is a question that I'll never get an answer to, but it's something I think, like, would I have had the intellectual courage and honesty to do that if I had been raised in, you know, one of these churches or in a family like this? And I genuinely don't know. Of course, I want to say yes, of course I would, but like, right. I know how hard it is, and I don't know that I would have. And I truly stand in awe of people who have been able to do that. I think it is a remarkable thing, and it ought to belong at like the top of. I mean, you should get awards for this, like Oscars, to go on your mantle.
My parents still think I'm going to hell. Thank you. Construction awards ceremony every year. Have the Heathen Queen give out the awards. Yes, I love this. Okay, we're gonna start this. Yes. Like so.
Sorry, I'm gonna go cry for a little bit. Thank you so much.
Is that don't spend so much time arguing with trolls on the internet that
I'll do that for you.
That you forget to get everyday good people in your life to go vote. Because most people aren't Marjorie Taylor Greene. Most people who even like would even say, oh, well, you know, they've been fed misinformation. A lot of them are not MTG. They are Liz Cheney, who's talking about a divinely inspired constitution. And we may not be able to ever reach someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? But Liz Cheney, if you keep remembering that there are people, that these are humans, and you try to reach their humanity, then you know, like then connections and seeds can be planted. Because for me, people just kept planting seeds, and things, the cognitive dissonance just became too much, and it all came crashing down. But even, you know, Biddy Buddha used to walk down the Halloween candy aisles and pray over the candy to undo the curses that the witches were putting on the candy. Okay, and
just send it to my house.
She was
I'll take it all.
So it's like writing people off, and you know, the other
I
side,
will say this, like,
nature.
I think, as someone said, like, argue a troll so that my LGBTQIA plus friends don't need to, and I agree with that, right? As someone who holds a lot of privilege, I have absolutely, that's true, they will let anyone on this channel, including me. Like, I have no problem going low. Like, you want to go low? I'll meet you in fucking Mariana's Trench. But that being said, part of the reason I do that is because I can, without being mischaracterized and demonized and all of these things in the same way that people in more marginalized people groups can't, right? And so I serve as a sort of front line of defense, and also me being like, yeah, sometimes you fuck around, sometimes you find out. Like, there is a consequence. But that all being said, yes, please don't end your activism on Twitter. I know it might seem like I do, but I don't. Please don't end your work in saying, like, yeah, you're dumb, right? Like, learn this nuance, learn what it takes to do the work, like, do it, all of it at all of these layers. Y'all are great. I love y'all so much. Drive everybody to the polls. I'm gonna let Andrew go because it is late. He has children and a wife, and he has been on with us for 2 hours. Andrew, you're a gem. Thank you for putting up with my just like nightmare ass tonight.
Hey, we've all had shit days. It was a pleasure to be on with y'all. Thank you for hosting me, and I'm happy to do it again anytime. Please, anytime. You are you're a real one. You're a friend. Pat said just finished class Witches, Witchcraft, and Magic. Oh my, I don't know if there's a way to access this still, but like, y'all should check him out. Check out what he does. It is
Pat's awesome.
Amazing. And on that note, y'all, like, subscribe. I'm about to get a P.O. box. Send me hate mail, send me cookies, send me love. I don't really care. Just send me something. And go buy Andrew's books. Go subscribe to everything he does ever. It's worthwhile. I'm on his Patreon. I own his books. I follow him on Twitter. I'm certain there's something I'm missing, but I'm going to rectify that. So get in there, get after it. And I love y'all so much. Thank you for rocking with me, even when I am an emotional wreck. So love y'all. Have a good night and see you next time. Bye. Good night. Oh, shit. You done fucked up, man. Ain't nothing but a gangsta party. Y'all